Hi there. This is Sacho. Welcome to the Ambitious Africans podcast. I'm very reflective today. Today has been one of those days where I'm trying to piece different things together. I'm currently recording from Golem in Albania. I came here for a short vacation. I've been here for about a week. And I was just trying to tie everything together, the experiences I've had here, the opportunity to rest, the food, the people, even learning about the Albanian history and so much that has inspired them and motivated them to get to the point they are as a country, and how it is truly an inspiration. I did not expect to hear the stories that I did on this trip about the country, and it's so inspiring and so moving. And I just wanted to connect all of it to all the things I was thinking of, or all the things I had going on before I came on this vacation. And I think by extension, some of them came up in the different episodes that we've been recording and talking about in the last few weeks. Now, there are lots of things I was thinking about before this trip. One of them was obviously just this whole idea about the African identity, the African conversation, business, opportunities, career growth, professional growth, and just all round living the life of our dreams. And I was just trying to connect it to this experience being here in Albania. And I would say that if for nothing, being here has really cemented a few things that I am learning about life. I think I'm at the point in my life where I am making sense of the world. The world is making sense to me in the most unforceful way. It's like I'm taking the world as it is. I'm not even trying to place expectations, hopes, ambitions, and things on. I'm just fairly taking the world as it is, and having a deep conversation with myself about how do I want to maneuver or navigate all of it. So that is a bit about what has been going on in my mind over the last couple of weeks, and now as I wind down this trip. Today's the last day here in Albania, and it's been a beautiful, beautiful place. It's been a beautiful experience. It's just been so enlightening in all the ways I did not expect. Um, and most importantly, it has also been restful for me. Now, today's episode, I'm going to talk about a few things that I noted down on my way here, before here, and even whilst here as well. That I've been tossing around in my mind. I was trying to, again, in my understanding of the world, I was trying to understand what life would have looked like if a different scenario was pursued, especially for us as Africans. There are some courses I'm taking in school now that's obviously it's also the coursework I'm doing. I'm constantly researching on businesses, international business behavior, how big corporates behave globally, and how the context of Africa is is seen in all those conversations. And even my dissertation is on how not big corporates, startups are entering the African market. So like I'm just in this space where I need to know a lot about the African context, not from just the historical cultural point of view, but in a way that makes sense for business, in the way that makes sense for career growth, professional growth, and just modernizing the African experience for its young people. So one of the things that I have been very passionate about over these last couple of weeks has been what would life had what would life have looked like if we had taken a different turn, or if we had taken a different decision at critical points. The thing about critical points in life is you don't know it is until you look back. And so I guess the best way to handle them is to always view every single day as a critical point. But that's me digressing. The point is, if we had taken different decisions at those critical points, would our life have looked different? I'm genuinely curious. one of the critical points for Africa's development or Africa's advancement, like I like to call it, was independence. When independence was declared for all the different African countries, obviously, not all countries got independence at the same time, but for a good number of countries, independence came around the same time. I think around the same decade, we had a lot more independent countries come up from the continent. And so I was wondering if we had made certain decisions, and this is a conversation I was having with someone yesterday, like what would have happened if we had made certain decisions at those critical points? And what would our life have looked like? So this is one alternative scenario that I am I am thinking about, right? If we are now realizing that uh, there is a level of mental conditioning, mindset issues, mentality issues that is impacting the way we are progressing in the world as Africans. If that awareness was there back then, what would have been the process of re-establishing the African experience after independence based on that knowledge? For Ghana's case, because I'm Ghanaian and I'm very familiar with our story and history, we I would say Kwame Nkrumah, no, I would say he did. He he knew what it took, what it meant for independence to happen, and he understood what it meant for that independence to go to permeate every single facet of life. And so in his books, in his speeches, he would talk about how the independence is meaningless until the African continent is also free, because it's a domino effect if things go wrong. It's a domino effect if things go right. So it was important for that to be the context of our independence. The second was about the way the West was going to retaliate through imperialism or neo-imperialism and all those things. I don't want to get too political in this in this episode, but you can tell I really read into these things a lot, because if there's one thing I have learned on this in this like my master's study, it is that everything is connected. It's so annoying how everything is connected, because you would think, oh, if you're running a business, you shouldn't care about how religion impacts it. Guess what? It does. If you're running a business, you would think, oh, I don't need to think about how health impacts my business. Guess what? It does. Oh, I don't know. I don't think marriage should impact how I run my business. Guess what? It does. Economics, politics, religion, education, everything connects to it. And everything about these different things I have mentioned on the global level, they are even more interconnected. So, so, so much interconnected. And so it's becoming more and more apparent that you can't pick one and choose the other, right? All of these things need to come together to really birth the kind of life we want to experience. And so in Africa's case, having these kinds of understanding of, just the political angle of it, the business, the economics business angle of it, the actual running a business day to day, product design, customer service angle to it, like they all come together. And it's important to understand all these things. I liken it to understanding um your level, your roof level, your sky level, and then your galaxy level. Like literally, like in terms of geography, it's just you now, the roof over your head, the sky over your head, and entire ozone layer, if I can call it. Like understanding how things stack up that way can really help you see where the world is going, what the world is doing. And so I think about how if Africa had made like different decisions going. in the past, like would our life have looked different? The thought process or the alternative scenario I have in mind was what were the actions that were necessary to really reshape what life was going to look like after independence. It was like, oh, for Ghana, our independence was 6th March. I'm like, on 7th, what happened on 7th March? The next day, what was the agenda? The next 2 days, the next 3 days, what was the agenda? And I feel that if all these good leaders we had not been unalived or taken away from us at the time that they did, one of the things that would have happened, I'm guessing, and this is hypothetical, one of the things I'm guessing would have happened was, first and foremost, there was going to be a conversation about discussing really what we had just experienced with colonization, with losing our families to slave trade, and having those kinds of giving space to the things that have happened and seeking redress, reconciliation, or a conclusion to them properly, like mourning properly of what has just happened and grieving properly of what has happened and creating the structures to rebuild. It would have looked like saying, oh, we need to be aware this is what has happened to us. These people came into our country, these people came into our communities. They told us we were not good enough. They told us our traditions were horrible. They told us to dress a certain way, to eat a certain way. Like they literally, mentally, and even physically, in all the ways, reshaped our being to suit them. And so when such an experience becomes yours, there has to be a deep unlearning. It's saying that actually I've been trained, raised, conditioned to live and move in this way for this long. Chances are I've trained and raised my children to do the same and their children. But this is where we draw the line and say we are going to all go on this journey of questioning and redesigning what it would look like for us to move forward on our own terms. And having that nationwide conversation, I liken that to the reconciliation process and forgiveness process that Rwanda had after the genocide. I liken it to, I think in 2007 or 2008, the then president of Ghana, His Excellency John Ejekum Kufuor, they had a national commission on reconciliation. I'll look into it and share the detail, like the link for you to read a few things on in the description. I'll liken it to, I'm guessing there might be some other things like that that countries might have done to just bring a level of redress and hard conversations that was needed to be had before progress could begin. And that conversation not happening has really cost us a lot. Because we didn't have that conversation with ourselves, we didn't come to a consensus on what we were going to do together. And so there wasn't a way to unite behind reclaiming our identity, reclaiming our voice, reclaiming our dignity. We didn't have the opportunity to have that consensus. And so, in the absence of that conversation, we all went our separate ways, dealing with the trauma, dealing with the issues, dealing with the challenges in our own individual ways. And the thing about having to do things on your own is that you find a way that works for you. But that doesn't mean it would work for everybody else who interacts with you. And so when you make a decision that this is how I'm going to show up in the world because this is what I have been raised with in based on the context I was birthed in, when you interact with people, they would look at you and say, huh, this conflicts with what how I was raised in the context I was raised, and there are clashes. And in that instance, none of these two people are wrong. None of them is wrong. Neither of them is wrong, right? But because we haven't come together to compare notes, to learn from each other, and to give that conversation a space between ourselves, we are butting heads, and there's a lot of conflict because we didn't have somebody to intervene and mediate that conversation amongst us as tribes, amongst us as Africans and the Caribbean, amongst us as African and the diaspora, amongst us as Africans and descendants of slaves on the other side of the pond. Like that, there were supposed to be different levels of conversations that should have happened when independence happened. And why then? Because it was the context was right, was fresh in people's minds. And so it would have been easier for people to really connect to the impact of what they've gone through and retrace their reclamation of their lives. It would have been easier because they were right, like it was most likely Nkrumah had grandparents who had seen slave trade happen, or great grandparents. Like within that generation, they were very close to the issue. So they could really unpack it properly, enough for it to not transcend into the next generation. But because we did not have that conversation, now we're all finding ways to manage it because as at 2026, a lot has happened. A lot of new issues have compiled on top of that foundational one that has made the foundational one even more important. But we don't have time to go to have that conversation. We don't have time to go back to try and change what should have been fixed a few like decades ago. So now we are like, okay, you know what? Let's spend our time trying to put band-aids on it. Let's try and find temporary measures to fix it so that at least we can make progress. And it's causing more division, more harm, and more confusion for most people, especially in their identities, especially in the way they show up in the world, and even how they navigate through different forms of discrimination, racism, and all those things. So it is really important to think through what these alternative scenarios could have looked like and giving it a thought around, is it too late? Now I'm coming to this conversation around slave trade being being yeah, being I don't know the right word. I think the right framing was the UN was charged with seeing the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest sin, the gravest crime against humanity. Yeah. So now we've had that experience, now we've had that conversation come up. My thought is it is our next critical point. It is the next critical point to have these conversations. The grandparents, the forebears who gave us independence, who gave us all these things, even though, most of them were unalived and taken away from us, this was what they were trying to build. This was what they were trying to do. And so our way of continuing the work that should have started and continued is having this conversation. And I feel it gives us a very beautiful opportunity to chat and go deep in really what does it mean for us now in this generation to redefine our dignity, redefine the way we describe ourselves and identify ourselves in the world, and reclaiming for us the the right to determine how we would want to be experienced, how we want to be addressed, and not leave it to the world. Because the world has never understood what to do with our awesomeness. But this is an opportunity for us to all have that conversation. That conversation between us as tribes, between us as communities, between us as a nation, between us as a region, between us as a continent, between us as Africa and the Caribbean, Africa and Africans living in the diaspora, Africans, like we need to have those levels of a conversation. And it's something I really want us to give us ourselves as an opportunity. So I really want to hear from you. What do you think about this whole conversation about slave trade? Some say it's too late. Why are we having that conversation now? Let's focus on other things. Others, like me, feel like we have another great opportunity on our hands. Let's maximize it. Let's maximize it, guys. Let's maximize it. And so, what would it look like to have national involvement in this? One would be creating an entire campaign around this and encouraging people to have the conversations, either through media, through literature, have like committing to this cultural building work, a cultural restructuring work, and doing that in a way that's collaborative with all these different ways. Like you've had all your cousins scattered all over the world. You want to have a family meeting. That's a good way to put it. We want to have a family meeting to talk about all these things and say, huh, this is what happened. This was what it looked like for you. This is what it looked like for us when you guys were taken away. This was, this is how we played a part in it. This is what we want to do to make that corrected. And how do we move on? We need to have the conversation, share ideas like, okay, this is what we want to do together and let's do it together. These are what we are going to do. These are the different ways we are going to support each other. These are the ways we are not going to duplicate effort. These are the different ways we are going to ensure we are providing equity to those who really need it in meeting the lives of their dreams. I feel the second thing that this entire slavery as a crime and translate transatlantic slavery as a crime categorization brings us is language for what we have just what we have all felt in our hearts. I feel like we've all carried this kind of feeling. It's things we've talked about in jest, it's things we've just thrown around, but like this gives us language to answer questions from our children. When our children ask us, why do we have these castles on our coast? We have language to say a crime was committed. These are the locations. These are where, these are the crime scenes. Essentially, these are the crime scenes. And this is what happened. And because of this crime, this is how it has impacted the people, the victims, the allies, the people who supported this crime. It was like an organized crime, and like we now have a language for it. It's a crime that stripped off people's dignity. It's a crime that stripped off people's humanity. And if we call it a crime, it means we can have an objective conversation with ourselves. Now, I don't know if we want to have conversations with the white folks, but that's a different conversation for another day, because that internal work has to happen first. We've been looking all around, throwing fingers all around. And I'm not saying we shouldn't. We are definitely right to do so, but I think it's time for all of us to have the family meeting to really talk about what does it mean to say a crime was committed. These are the first impact victims. This is how we facilitated this crime against them. This is what we will do to redress it. This is what we'll do to fix it. This is what we'll do to ensure it doesn't happen again. And this is what we'll do to move forward. I want to thank you for sitting with me through this. Obviously, this was not scripted. I try not to come here scripted because I really want to have an honest conversation with you. And I want you to really think through this um, for yourself and share with me your own thoughts. I have been learning the history of Albania and thinking through all the challenges they went through. I think in another episode, I'll share more about what I'm learning because obviously it's not my story to tell, it's theirs. And if I can find resources, I'll put it in the description notes so you can also check out. But ideally, the idea is that Albania went through something. They were under a dictator for decades, and as a result of that dictatorship era, a lot of things, a lot of mental conditioning, a lot of abuses, a lot of illusions. It was just a lot, and now they're trying to rebuild after that. And so the way they've designed their systems, the way they've designed their lives, the way even interacting with the older people and knowing this kind of history for myself and visiting some of the museums, it's so humbling. It's so humbling. The people are so polite, so such an amazing, amazing, warm people. And I think I have an incentive to try to learn the Albanian language. But I can't assume there's only one Albanian language, but the most um the widely spoken one for starters. But I am so grateful for the opportunity to record this particular episode in Albania within this context of experiencing a country that is trying to rebuild from trauma and thinking about my own continent and how we can do ours. And it's so refreshing and so comforting to know that we are not the only one trying to rebuild. I never thought I would hear such a story about a country in Europe, which makes me want to really dig deep into a lot of other things within the like different European histories. But we are not the only ones trying to rebuild. This is an opportunity for us to do the best we can. I'm not going to say this is the right way to do it or the perfect way to do it, but like just do the best we can and make sure we correct wrongs and provide language for the next generation so they do not step out into the world questioning themselves if they're the only ones feeling like they don't belong, feeling like they have to do 10 things just to be at the baseline of other people. Makes no sense. Anyway, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.